And we're going to go to our final guest, which is an unbelievable story, Corey, that you have lined up. And how did you come onto this story?
Well, I mean, it's not exactly an unknown story. I mean, this is the New York Times Magazine had a really riveting story about this, and it turned into what is now a book called Speck in the Sea, and what is going to be a major motion picture coming out. And we're going to go about 100 miles east out to Montauk Point, where about 4 years ago, a fisherman named John Aldridge was about 40 miles offshore off Montauk, and he went to pull on a cooler or something snapped, something slipped. He fell off into the ocean, and he's 12 hours. He had no life jacket on, 12 hours in the frigid waters of the Atlantic. He, using his own ingenuity, his toughness, and he was miraculously, well, I don't want to give it away and say, stay tuned to see if he was rescued or not, but we have him on the line, so we may have tipped our hand already. So, John, thanks for talking to us this morning.
Hey, thank you for having me today.
Yeah, no, you and I chatted briefly last week, and I know you have told this story every day of your life for the past 4 years, multiple times, and in probably different levels of detail, and you told it beautifully in this book called Speck in the Sea that's just out. And even the articles on it, the Times article was a long, lengthy article that really got into exactly how you managed to survive 12 hours in the water when, the co-captain on the boat, Anthony Sosinski, who you co-owned this boat with, he was sleeping and the boat was on automatic pilot at the time, so he didn't even know you went off. So you were in there, people didn't know where you were, and through kind of almost a near miraculous system of rescue, they did find you clinging to life and clinging onto a buoy out in the ocean. And but why don't you talk about what happened, and and then we'll get into a little bit. The telling of it has become almost a whole nother story in itself of how this has gone to another level as far as the book and the movie.
Yeah, well, we like you said, my partner Anthony and I, we've been friends since second grade, so we own our own business out here. We catch lobster and crab, and about 60, 70 miles south of Montauk Point. And, I was getting the boat ready one night, typical trip for us. We leave about 8 o'clock at night because it takes us about 8 or 9 hours to get out to our fishing grounds, slow boat. So with that, I had pulled on a cooler to get it off one of our hatches to get into one of the tanks where we keep our lobster, and the handle had snapped. And being that we have a lobster boat, we have an open stern, so the back of the boat is wide open. And there was nothing for me to grab onto. Once the handle had snapped, I was in full motion out the back of the boat, and it was about 2:30 in the morning, 45 miles from land. You land in the water, and as you're landing how bad it is, and nobody in the world knows you're even missing, because the crew was asleep. So it was a whole mind game to get over first. I was just about to drown as soon as I got into the water, panicking so much that I realized my boots were so buoyant, and I just took them off and to empty the water out of them and create an air pocket and put one under each arm. And I changed the whole game right there. I was floating. Gave me some time to think.
Where was the boat?
The boat was on autopilot, steaming away from me, heading south.
What was that like to see that boat? I mean, I'm sure you must have reflexively screamed and yelled and then got no response and just saw that boat disappear.
A lot of cursing.
Right?
Yeah, it was an unbelievable experience. I mean, you see salvation going away from you. Freaking out, knowing that today's the day you're going to die. Wow. I mean, who lives through something like that? I mean, I've been around the water a long time, and nobody falls off the boat at night and is ever found. So you have that in your head, and that's weighing on you the whole time.
Was it cold, John? Was the water cold?
Excuse me?
What was the water cold? I mean, when did it become like a temperature game? Essentially, right away, right? I guess. Yeah.
I didn't allow any of that. I was like in superhuman mode for some reason. My adrenaline was flying, and I didn't even feel the temperature of the water. I didn't, allow any pain or anything to bother me. I was just on like a mission to stay alive, and I knew that anything that would deteriorate me was deteriorating me was going to, make me dwell on it. On that stuff, on other stuff.
How were you prepared for that mindset? I mean, did you practice some kind of meditation?
Well,
Are you into
no.
Or what?
Well, your life is on the edge like that. I mean, you could either step onto this side or you could step onto that side, and it's really easy and seductive to just say, screw it, I'm just going to die. Because it's just a lot less pain, it's a lot easier, and I can't take it no more. Well, that was very scary for me, and I could not accept that. So I just turned it around, and everything that was negative towards me, I just turned to a positive, and it really worked.
We'll talk about some of those negative factors. What did you experience then?
Well, an hour or two after being in the water at night, I had a couple of blue sharks swimming around me. So that was a whole nother mental game to deal with, and trying to stop my breathing from panicking, being that there were sharks in the water next to me at night. So I had to get into my own head, and just I couldn't it's either fight or flight. I couldn't. So I just had to get in my head and calm my breathing down and calm my heart rate down so that they wouldn't really come after me or check me out too much. And eventually they left me alone.
Do you, when you see a shark, is it advisable to beat the water, kick your legs, or is it best to stay still?
I think it's best to stay still.
Yeah.
Any of that splashing and flailing around will definitely attract them over to you. Even your heart rate, being scared.
Were they known to attack humans, John?
Blue sharks aren't, but no, you never know. So,
that was yeah.
So then what, John? What happened? It was a series. I guess you knew at some point if you can stay alive, it increase your chances. The guys are going to start to look for you. But and then what did you do to kind of stay alive and stay above water and everything?
Well, being that I had my boots as flotation, it gave me time to think, and I figured, all right, I just got to stay alive to daylight. I set goals for myself, and I just said, all right, I'm not going to, be so overwhelmed with the whole situation. I broke it down, and I just said, I'm going to focus till daylight, stay alive till then, and when the daylight comes, hopefully I could be able to see a buoy. Because, being that I'm a fisherman out there, I know where the fishing gear is in relation to where I was in the water. So that helped. And I knew that there would be buoys around, around in the area. And I figured by daylight time I could find one and get onto that and at least, hold on to something, thinking it would. And once I found one and grabbed it, I realized it wasn't really what I thought it was, because it was, connected to the bottom of the ocean, and the swell's going, and it's bringing me under the water each time the swell goes through. So I was more buoyant surface just in my booth than hanging onto that buoy. So it was it was a game of give and take all day long, processing.
Right, and so then describe how the rescue happened.
So after I was on the buoy, I realized a Coast Guard helicopter was going back and forth to the west of me, and I knew I had to get out. I knew I had to get more in the search pattern. So I got off the buoy with my little knife, and I swam toward the helicopter where he was flying all day long. And eventually I had found another buoy. I had tied two of them together, and I sat in between them as a chair. And I figured I was going to stay there for the night in case, whatever. I just didn't want to be in the ocean. And it seemed like, a couple more hours later, eventually the helicopter had come over doing a pass down the line of buoys, and there I was waving, screaming, and freaking out, and they had seen me, and they sent the diver down. It was definitely an unbelievable experience, to say the least.
Right.
And
then coming out of that, all these people that maybe you mentally may have said goodbye to in your mind, or maybe you didn't. Maybe this is part of your survival. You didn't even enter that realm, right? You saw.
Yeah, well, I didn't want, like I said, I've said before, I got a lot of people that love me, and I wasn't going to give up on that. I had my 4-year-old nephew at the time, and thinking about, wow, he's going to grow up without me, kind of thing. That just made me even fight even harder, So there was no way I was mentally giving up. It would have been a physical thing, if anything. When I came out of the water, my core temperature was 94 degrees, so I was, getting close to not being able to control my arms and legs, being hypothermic and all.
John McDonough here. You often read about when someone has a near-death experience that what they always say is their life passed before them. What was going through your mind, and what memories came up to you while you were sitting there contemplating what was going on?
Well, it seemed like it went by the second, not even by the minute. It went by the second, so it was very slow. My mind was screaming, and you're thinking about how people are going to react when they find out that you're gone. And you're sitting there dying, literally, and you're worried about, what's my mother going to say when she finds out that, she's never going to see me again? And what's my father, how's my brother going to, who's going to take care of my dog, and you're thinking about all of these things, and, and that's all going through your head slowly, and you're just picking away at it as you trying to survive. It's weird. It's definitely weird experience.
Right. And I mean, obviously, you're good at telling this, and I feel like when I'm listening to you talk about this now, I can see why, maybe if someone else would have spent 12 hours in the water, it wouldn't have been a book, because I think one thing that you're in touch with is, like, even though by trade you're not a psychologist, but I mean, anyone who's, if you talk to a terminally ill cancer patient in that year where they're wondering, you went through in 12 hours what some people, go through or wonder about. Almost every person has wondered about it, So, to talk, the advancement of getting towards, am I going to die? Am I not going to die? What can I do to prevent it? So it's like a whole mental experience that you went through in addition to this physical crazy experience being in the water,
Yeah, I was trying on both parts. Just to get through that mentally was crazy, and then getting done with it, and like having a sense of humor. Like when the Coast Guard rescue swimmer swam up to me, he tapped me on the shoulder and he's like, "Sir, are you okay?" And I turned around and looked at him and I said, "I got 2 days left in me." And he didn't know what to say. He was like blown away by it. Yeah. And I'm like, "Let's get the hell out of here." He's like, "Okay." Nice. He figured I'd be freaking out.
Now talk about the book and also the movie deal. One thing, I don't know if you want to talk about this, but I mentioned to these guys that that Harvey Weinstein did get on the phone and bought the rights. They've since expired for him, but he didn't want to put in the movie rights. But what was that like just to cut to Harvey for a second, because he's been in so much in the news for something else the past year?
Yeah, he's bigger than life, Harvey. With 10 people following behind him, and he made us an offer we couldn't refuse at the time, and we went with him, and then the contract eventually ran out, and it was picked up by Blumhouse.
Right.
Which is thankfully.
So when he thought the deal was going to someone else, he got on the phone and what did he say to you?
I had to throw a block. I had my lawyer deal with him because.
Oh, okay.
He could totally just chew you up, and I'm not in a position of negotiating like that. So I had my bulldog on him, and he dealt with him, but. Yeah, I just dealt with him.
He wasn't going to miss that deal, though. He right? Yeah.
No, he was all over it, because Sony TriStar tried to pick it up first, and then Harvey came to the table late, and he was a little upset about that, and like I said, he made us an offer we couldn't refuse, so we went with him, and eventually he didn't come through. So. Right. Amongst other things for him. So
one of my sons had a diving business in Bali in Indonesia, but before that he was in Australia and up on the coast there, and he used to a group of them used to take out 12 or 14 people to out to where the great white sharks were, and so they would let them would tug them out in the diving gear and so forth, and get them in the water, and then get them back in the boat and get back in. But my son said that the crew he was with were extremely careless about equipment and diving vests and so on and so forth, and it really annoyed him. And so he quit this crowd anyway. He figured there was something awful, he said. He had a presentiment that something awful was going to happen. And sure enough, they did not count the 14 people. They left 2 outside and out off the coast there. And those 2 have never been seen again. And he said, I knew that was going to happen. But I was wondering, what would you say happened to those 2 people that were never seen again, though they did have vests and equipment?
Well, I'm sure they were in their head a lot, thinking about everything and how screwed they were. I mean, they did have wetsuits on and probably had a knife and stuff on them and, dive equipment. So they had some kind of buoyancy, but, without fresh water, they probably lived, 2-3 days floating in the ocean.
Oh, my God. And the great
If they didn't get eaten.
And the great whites, of course, were out there, and that was the area of the great white sharks. And there,
right, and that's just a whole nother level.
So they would have one as an appetizer.
Yeah, well, when I was in the water, they have that tracking of the great whites they have, and one of them was about 20 miles away from me that day.
Really?
They were recording it, but that weekend after I got rescued, they had a shark tournament out here in Montauk, and there was the most minkows ever caught in one tournament. Was the weekend after I got out of the water, so there was a lot of sharks in the area, and everybody that looked for me said they saw a lot of sharks when they were looking, So
wow.
On the surface.
All right. So John, with the payday to all this, I guess you're retired and you're speaking to us from the Bahamas or somewhere, right?
Yeah, right. I was just on the back deck of the boat putting more traps on.
So you're still working. You guys are both working together, you and Anthony.
Of course. Yeah,
How is the lobster market these days, John?
It's good. We do good. We fish offshore, so it's pretty productive. And we have crabs. We catch these Jonah crabs. They're like the northern version of the stone crab.
Yeah.
And we sell the whole crab, so it's pretty productive. And being that we do live in the Hamptons, we get top dollar, so it's nice.
Mm-hmm. And John, you have a book out now, and they're making a movie. How much say do you have in it? Because you often hear, and Malachi, your brother Frank, they had no say at all in how the movie was being made. And you often hear people saying, "Oh my God, read the book; it's way better than the movie." So, what type of influence or did you have in either one, the book or the movie?
Who's going to play you?
Yeah, and who's going to play you?
So the book, we had that was all us. That was me and Anthony, and we had hired a ghostwriter, and she worked with us, and that's all us, the book. The movie, we have in our contract that, we have consulting rights. So we'll have a little bit of, something going on. I'm not sure exactly, they're going to Hollywoodize it, I'm sure. But hopefully in the technical stuff, I'll be able to make sure they do the fishing parts and the boat parts justice, at least.
Yeah.
Well, movies are a director's medium, not the actors and not the creators. They will. The director is the one. So
they're coming out in 2 weeks to write the screenplay. So
is that right?
It's in the works. It's in the works.
Yeah. All right. So again, it's Speck in the Sea. It's by John Aldridge, who's speaking with us now, and his childhood buddy, co-captain, co-owner of the boat, Anthony Sosinski. I have that right?
Yep.
Yeah. And what is the word on the film? I mean, these things take years, but I mean, so they're coming out to write the screenplay. I mean, that's a good sign. They're going to consult. They're coming out to write the screenplay. You're going to have a little bit. You have part of it, right? I mean.
Yeah. They're going to be here. I'm going to spend a week with them, right during prime lobster season, and and we're going to get it done. We're going to create a good movie. Hopefully, is big enough, better than The Perfect Storm or something. That kind of craziness. So we'll see.
Right.
And speaking of that, John, was the weather calm all the time you were in the water?
Well, it was just after a storm we had, so it was about a 4-foot swell and about a 10-mile-an-hour breeze. So it wasn't flat at all, and it was actually it was rough enough so that I couldn't even close my mouth and not the water would go up my nose. So it was a little choppy out that day. That's what made it harder for them to see me.
And John, how did Anthony feel about this when he woke up and looked around and you're gone? What was going through his mind?
He was, beside himself. I couldn't believe it, and it's like something like that. It's so surreal. You can't even believe you're in that position of having to go through what's going through. I mean, he was sweating to death, and he was freaking out, and I was trying to keep it control and trying to find, trying to coordinate, because there was a lot of other boats from our harbor that heard his distress for me, and they all came running too. So there was another 20 boats from our harbor that he had to coordinate.
Did he think you were playing a joke on him?
No. You don't play jokes on the ocean. No.
Hiding somewhere and giving you a scare.
And have you taken? Do you take more steps now, safety-wise, or whether it's a PFD, life jacket, or some kind of signal emitting? I don't know what you could do. What could you do, really?
Yeah, actually, all of it. We actually put a tailgate on the back of the boat now. So the back of the boat has like a tailgate, like a pickup truck. So when we're working, we put it down. When we're not working, we pull it up. So that'll eliminate falling out the back, hopefully. And I do have personal EPIRB tracking device that we wear on us, and the rain gear that I wear has flotation in it. So but you got to be wearing it. I was just wearing shorts.
Well, unless you want a sequel, John. I mean.
Yeah, I always wear my boots. I know they'll work. Yeah.
But is any of this mandatory? I mean, it sounds like you're doing it personally as a precaution. Is it mandatory that the boats go out, have to have the life vest, have to have the signals, and the tailgate now?
Yeah. It's mandatory for the boats to have survival suits and life raft and an EPIRB to signal back to land in case the boat sinks. But like I said, you have to be the boat has to be sinking for you to put the survival suits on and use the life raft or something like that. So, normal everyday use of life jackets, they don't require you to wear that, which they should, like you wear your seatbelt, but it's just not that way on the ocean.
And still no fear of going back out every day after that.
Nah, it's scary on land. Too many crazy people on land.
Right. Yeah, he's
right? I mean, I only got 3 guys on my boat.
He's dodging Range Rovers, not blue sharks. This guy's like,
he had Harvey Weinstein coming after him. Come on.
Yeah, there's worse sharks.
How bad could it be?
You know what they call them, right, John? Sidiots out there.
Idiots.
Sidiots. He's dodging.
We have a lot of different things.
Yeah, I'm sure.
We have a lot of different words we call them.
All right. Okay, well, John Aldridge, thanks for calling in, and hopefully no sequels, at least not in the water anyway.
No.
And the book is called The Speck in the Sea, and it's just out now. And John Aldridge, Anthony Sosinski, and thanks for coming on.
All right, thank you for having me. It's great talking to you.
Okay, yeah.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, like you said, Corey, it does take a person to tell the story. Say he went in and he was very introspective and didn't talk much or didn't analyze his day at sea.
Oh, it
wouldn't be much of a story, but with the way he was able to relay what he was thinking and how to survive in the buoy, you would have thought, all right, he made the buoy, and then almost ended up being worse than not having it.
It's not like he was proactive, trying to save himself.
Yeah, it's almost as dangerous as running for Congress in Queens.
Right.
You could say he did go down.
Yeah,
that's it.
In the water.
Yeah.
Right.
So anyway, we